Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and we are going to be jumping into our waiver wire targets heading into Week 5. Now, Week 4 seemed to bring a little bit more normalcy. Yeah, we still had some duds that didn't quite show up, those studs, as we like to call them. But it feels like for the most part, we had a lot of guys, those top-end guys, have much better weeks than what we have been accustomed to so far this season, which is great news. Maybe it means that those guys are finally starting to get back into the flow of things, which is only good news for our rosters. But it doesn't mean that we can't take a few minutes to still try and improve our roster. So the waiver wire video, as always, we've got guys that you should be targeting at the running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. And then at quarterback and defensive special teams, some streamers that you can take a look at this coming week into Week 5. And then I've got a few guys that we may have to start thinking about dropping as well. So let's hop right on into it. And just as a quick reminder, everybody, that Brian Robinson from Washington should be making his way back after that unfortunate incident in the preseason where he was shot in the leg. It sounds like he is finally going to be ready to go for Week 5. Antonio Gibson was already getting ready to lose touches to him. And now Brian Robinson coming back after this layoff. We'll see how he's feeling, how long it takes him to get back into really football shape, game shape, and really be able to maybe start taking away some of those touches from Antonio Gibson. If you're an Antonio Gibson owner, make sure you have Brian Robinson. If you're not, you could still stash him anyway and see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Nyheim Hines from Indianapolis, he's all the way he's dropped down into like the 50 percentile of being owned across multiple platforms recently because people just weren't happy with his performance. But now it sounds like that Jonathan Taylor can end up having a high ankle sprain. Like, there's nothing confirmed on if he's going to miss time or anything like that, but obviously Nyheim Hines would be the first guy up if something were wrong with Jonathan Taylor. So if there is, make sure Hines is on your radar to add him if someone in your league had already given up. What about Raheem Mostert? He outcarried Chase Edmonds 15-5 on Thursday Night Football, and he was far better as well. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry, to Chase Edmonds' 1.2 yards per carry. Yes, Chase Edmonds had a receiving touchdown, but it was really his only work. Both of these guys got the same amount of targets in the passing game as well. Mostert is starting to become a guy that is taking more and more touches away from Chase Edmonds. Latavius Murray for New Orleans. Now, a lot of us were left in a bad position on Sunday morning when all day long we heard the day before, Friday, Saturday, that Kamara was questionable but should be good to go. And then we wake up on Sunday morning, and if you slept in a little bit, you miss the fact that he was ruled out. And when he was ruled out, it left us in a predicament where either we were rushing real quick to grab either Mark Ingram or Latavius Murray. A lot of people probably didn't even grab Murray, knowing that he had just been elevated from the practice squad. So now you have an opportunity where you could end up grabbing him as well. He was much better than Mark Ingram this past week. He did outplay Ingram. He scored a touchdown as well. He looked a lot better. We have no idea how long Alvin Kamara is going to be dealing with this rib injury. If you own Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray is going to be a good bet for you to hold on to as well. Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley, both from Atlanta. We're going to keep an eye on both of these guys. Now, Cordero Patterson, we know, is banged up. He ended up playing this game. He scored a touchdown. He ended up having to leave as well. He only had 9 carries before he ended up exiting the game. 84 yards on 10 carries for Algier. Now, his long was 42, so a bulk of those yards came on 1 carry. For Caleb Huntley, he was a little bit more even throughout the entire matchup. He co-led the team with Algier with 10 carries. He also scored a touchdown. Deeper leagues, if Algier is already gone, which more than likely he is, because he's kind of been the first guy up, Caleb Huntley is now a guy to keep an eye on. If you're in deeper leagues, I'm going to grab Caleb Huntley and hold him to see how he starts to work over the next couple of weeks and if Patterson's going to end up missing more time. Now, my Fantrax find of the week. Make sure that if you're playing any fantasy sports over on Fantrax, that you're using our code word headliners when you sign up. Move your basketball league over there, baseball, football, it doesn't matter. Move your leagues over to Fantrax. Make sure that you're signing up over there and getting all that taken care of. My Fantrax find of the week is going to be Mike Boone from Denver. Now, still not a whole lot of information on Javonte Williams. He left the game on Sunday in crutches. It is a right knee injury that they're keeping an eye on. Melvin Gordon is going to be the next guy up, obviously, but he leads the league in fumbles right now. And not only that, but he had a very costly one this past week. Mike Boone in very limited action looks explosive, and we've seen this in the past with him when he was at Minnesota. He does have this, does have a tendency to be very explosive. Doesn't get a whole lot of touches, but when he does, he looks pretty decent. He could be in for a major role upgrade here, especially if this team gets frustrated with Melvin Gordon, especially if he continues to put the ball on the ground. We could see Mike Boone be a guy that we rely on to get Javonte Williams back to get into our lineup. And then for Tampa Bay, this is an interesting one to keep an eye on. Rachaad White. Now, he did match Leonard Fournette on Sunday night for the most part. Now, here's the question on it. What was it? Why was it? Was it because of the matchup? Was it because they started to fall behind so quickly? Was it because Leonard Fournette couldn't run the ball effectively? This is something to keep an eye on. I'm not running out to grab Rachaad White and throw him into my lineup right away. And I don't think Leonard Fournette, realistically, over the next couple of weeks, is losing a lot of touches to him. But we did see him come in at the goal line. We saw him get some of that work that Leonard Fournette would be used to getting. But again, given the circumstances of the game, is that what dictated Rachaad White getting out there as much as he did? And even keel matchups moving forward, that is where we are going to have to see. If Rachaad White keeps it up, then he's going to be a guy that we need to probably priority add. For deeper leagues, he might already be gone. A lot of people may have given up on him. I would start adding him back right now. The wide receiver position. Michael Gallup comes back. He's looking healthy, which is great to see. Only 3 targets compared to Noah Brown's 6, but they're likely going to work him back in for the next couple of weeks. He did score that touchdown. I would expect those targets to still be in Noah Brown's favor for right now, and then let's see what happens over the next couple of weeks as Michael Gallup starts to show he is in game form. Jahan Dotson for Washington. Everyone started grabbing him, and then we dropped him, and now I think we're going to be grabbing him again. Another touchdown. The volume is not great. He's going to be boom or bust for you every week. He's sitting right about 60% owned, 65% owned in some leagues. A couple of platforms, he's a little bit closer to 40, or excuse me, a little bit closer to 55. So I did want to throw him in here that, yes, if you're dealing with any type of wide receiver injuries, Jahan Dotson, I think it's someone that we go ahead and grab and hold on to. Now, I don't know if he's going to be a weekly start every single week because a lot of his value is predicated on him scoring a touchdown, but we know Curtis Samuel doesn't have a great injury history so far in the NFL. If anything were to happen to him, Jahan Dotson really skyrockets at that point. Josh Reynolds with a pretty decent day. He caught 7 of his 8 targets for 81 yards and a touchdown. This one's going to depend on Amon-Ra St. Brown and Chark, though. If those guys come back and they're fine, more than likely we'll be good. I will say, though, that probably Josh Reynolds has unseated DJ Chark at this point. DJ Chark is falling down to that 3rd or 4th option. It's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, hopefully TJ Hawkins, and then Josh Reynolds, then DJ Chark. And then, of course, when you throw DeAndre Swift in there, you're going to have to include him as well. Alec Pierce from Indianapolis. I mean, he's starting to really settle in as the wide receiver, too. He has 11 targets over the past 2 games. He's more of the deep threat there. Alec Pierce is starting to kind of transition into that role that we saw from T.Y. Hilton. Just a diet version of it. He's not going to be the alpha, but that guy in the offense that they need to make big plays, that they need to go down the field and stretch the field, that's what Alec Pierce is going to bring to this offense. Darnell Mooney, he's down to 50% owned on multiple platforms right now. Everybody has given up on him. He finally got 11 targets over the last 2 games. We're seeing a tick up in the targets and 94 yards in week 4. We're starting to see it. Maybe this is a step in the right direction. If you gave up on Darnell Mooney, it may have been a little too early. I would work on bringing him back. George Pickens from Pittsburgh. I mean, here's the thing, though. Is it going to be Kenny Pickett's job? Is he going to be the guy moving forward? It feels like yes. Now, he did bring a little bit of swagger. He looked a little bit better, helped push the ball down the field this past Sunday when he came in, but he did throw 3 interceptions. So he's not a guy that's fully there yet. Didn't look great. But pushing the ball down the field is the key. That's something that they have not been able to do as of recent, and that's something that's really going to help out George Pickens. To me, he's kind of developing into the potential number 3 in this offense. Really depends, though. He's more of a deeper add still for me at this point because you've got Najee Harris, you got Deontay Johnson, obviously you've got Pat Freiermuth, and you got Chase Claypool. And then Romeo Dobbs, and as I like to call him around here, the Doobs. Code led the team with 8 targets this past Sunday, and he scored a touchdown. This had the feeling of a little bit of a tougher matchup, a little bit more of a defensive battle, and it ended up being anything but that. And Doobs is a guy that shined again. Yes, Lazard had the bigger volume game. It doesn't matter to me. Doobs, for me, is becoming the wide receiver 1 on this team. Now for the tight end position, several tight ends that we could take a look at this week. Several guys had decent weeks. Hayden Hurst, the volume has dropped off since his first 2 games. He was able to score last week, though. Could be someone to stash on your bench if you're streaming tight ends. I mean, this is a guy that, again, is dealing with so many weapons around him. It's going to be very tough to rely on him every single week. But if the matchup's good, or if anybody misses a game, that's where he becomes even more valuable. David Njoku, it is finally happening. Another good week, 7 targets, caught 5 of those for 73 yards. Absolutely love it. This is where you have to insert that scene from The Office where Michael comes out of his office and he's yelling, "Oh my God, it's happening." That is how I feel with David Njoku. That is how I ran out of the studio. Will Dissly, this is not a priority ad, but I am bringing up the fact that he has 3 touchdowns in 4 games this season. There's not a whole lot of volume. There's not a whole lot of yards. The dude is scoring touchdowns, though. Sometimes that's all that matters at the tight end position. Keep an eye on it. We might need to start actually putting him in our lineup. But knowing my luck, I'll probably have him as a start this week, and he'll end up doing nothing. Gerald Everett from the Chargers. This is a guy that's still like under 35% owned on some platforms. At least 6 targets in the last 3 games. Could see a decent role even when Keenan Allen comes back. He seems to be a guy that Justin Herbert is relying on. And you've got all these deep play options there that teams are kind of forgetting about Gerald Everett, and they're letting him loose at certain points in times. Mo Alley Cox. Jelani Woods had 2 touchdowns last week. Mo Alley Cox had 2 this week. No idea what's going on at the tight end position there in Indianapolis. They need all the offensive firepower that they can get. Keep an eye on this situation to see one of these guys maybe starts to establish himself as the tight end 1 in that offense. Pat Freiermuth, he's been touchdown dependent. But his 9 targets last week led the team. And that is what we need to see. With Kenny Pickett being the guy moving forward, we could start to see Pat Freiermuth finally get the volume he deserves at the position. And then Big Bobby Tunyon, only 2 targets last week, but he did score a touchdown. Not really adding right now, but again, somebody I wanted to just throw on here for you to keep your eye on to see if we can start getting him some more volume. Now, let's talk about some streaming options. Our first streaming options are going to be at the quarterback position. I've got 3 for you this week. It's going to be Jared Goff going up against New England. Goff shredded a pretty decent Seattle defense. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but it's been pretty decent so far. Absolutely shredded him, and he didn't even have any of his top options outside of TJ Hawkinson. The New England defense has been pretty rough at times this year, especially through the year. Could see Jared Goff really getting after him again, especially if we can get Amon-Ra St. Brown back. Geno Smith from Seattle, they're going to go up against New Orleans. Yes, it's not the best matchup in the world, but he leads the league in completion percentages right now. He's finding his top targets. And really the game plan in Seattle is going to Geno Smith's strength, and he runs a little bit. So that helps out and gives you a little bit of a ceiling on a weekly basis as well. And Zach Wilson from the New York Jets. Miami has allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks so far to begin this season. Zach Wilson got some of that rust off this past week. He's got tons of weapons there, which is everything that you want. And with Miami, obviously, we'll see, what's going to be going on over the next week with them. Teddy Bridgewater going to be the guy for now, at least. Is that offense going to sputter at all? If it's not, and it's still moving the ball, then that's just going to have more opportunities for New York to be throwing the ball around as well. What about some defensive teams that we got to take a look at? Only really 2 streamers that I'm highly considering this week. There might be some other ones that I take a look at and I say, yeah, those are decent options, but these are the 2 that I'm really locked in on. The Broncos against Indianapolis. Indianapolis might be without JT this week, and they've had some issues moving the ball as well. Now, they looked much better this past week, but we'll see what happens moving forward. Broncos definitely could be a team after they really got pushed around this past week. They regain, they come back, and they push Indianapolis around in week 5. And then the Vikings going up against Chicago. Chicago's offense looked a little bit better last week, but still not like a ton better. Still not at the point where this is like no, we're staying away from that offense because they're way too good. No, they still don't have a whole lot of pass catching weapons. They don't have really great just like game changers headliners right now, and that's a problem on offense. The Vikings could be a great option for you streaming this week. Now, a few players to potentially drop as well. James Cook from Buffalo, he's not really doing anything right now. He was a guy that we kind of brought up in the preseason, but it wasn't really us that loved him. It was somebody else. So James Cook for me, I mean, Devin Singletary is still the guy right there. They've obviously wanted to include Zach Moss a little bit more. I do like kind of James Cook's skill set, but he hasn't done nearly enough. He's been very inconsistent. You even saw it this past week. His only target in the passing game, he dropped, and he was wide open. It was a really bad drop, and he's not getting any touches on the ground. So James Cook, I'm done for. Alexander Mattison for Minnesota. If you don't own Dalvin Cook, there's no reason to own Alexander Mattison. We saw it this past week. Yeah, Dalvin Cook didn't do that great, and Alexander Mattison scored, but Mattison didn't do anything other than that one touchdown. That was his only catch of the game, in fact, and he didn't do anything on the ground. So Mattison, if you own Cook, yeah, we stash him. If you don't, there's no reason for you to own him. Russell Gage for Tampa Bay. Godwin is back. Julio's still hanging around right now. Perryman and Beasley are sitting on the roster. Russell Gage for me, when we definitely knew there would be no Chris Godwin, when Mike Evans was suspended, when we know Julio was banged up, he was a good option then. But there's just too many pass catching options there right now. So I'm not interested in stashing Russell Gage, hoping that somebody were to get hurt, which we don't ever hope for, or that someone is going to be, booted, take their shirt off and run across the field. Antonio Brown. They don't have anybody that's going to do that this year. Chase Claypool from Pittsburgh. I mean, between Johnson, Muth, Pickens, he didn't have a role this past week. He hasn't really done anything this season. Kenny Pickett, I mean, again, yes, he's going to help push the ball down the field a little bit more, but is it going to be to Claypool? I mean, him and Pickens got to work together a little bit more with the twos at times this season when Pickens wasn't really running with the ones yet. So those are things we're all going to keep an eye out. Chase Claypool, I'm definitely starting to get out on at this point. Mecole Hardman, I mean, he's not even really being considered an option anymore. I've seen a lot of people out there trying to hold him still. But I mean, when Sky Moore is getting more targets than you, it means that your time is almost done at that point. And DJ Chark from Detroit, I brought him up earlier in the show. Josh Reynolds is going to be a guy that's going to take over that number 2 role from DJ Chark. Chark kind of had it to begin the season, but Reynolds being healthy now and feeling good, that prior connection with Jared Goff is really going to help continue to build that relationship in the offense. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my waiver wire research for week 5 done for you, packaged up, bow tied nicely. Y'all can do what you need to with your teams to keep moving forward. Hopefully you had a bounce back you had a bounce back week and you got a dub this week if you've been off to a tough start. If you got another loss this week, we still have a couple of weeks to go. I've seen plenty of people start 0-6 and still make the playoffs. I've seen it happen. I've seen 1-5, 2-4. I've seen it happen before. So we still got a couple of weeks before we absolutely are panicking. If your team still isn't doing anything after week 4, yeah, there might be some changes that we need to make. Let us know in the comments. As always, if there's a player you're thinking about dropping, let me know down in the comments and I'll give you some personal one-on-one time to decide whether or not you actually need to drop them or not. Who are you thinking of dropping them for and why? Leave those comments down below. Hit the like button for me as always. And if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, please subscribe. 170,000 subscribers right around the corner. Become one of those today. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you all checking out the video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.